not really a polygamist holiday. Just saying, it's just not. I definitely think it would be more difficult as a husband who has multiple wives to be like, which one should I take out?
Especially when you live in a plural family, Valentine's Day is always a little hard to navigate, right? And so we ended up usually doing.
It happened in a single instant. The kind of moment that makes you stop, rewind, and ask yourself, did I really just see that? Kody Brown, sitting across from host Sukanya Krishnan during the tell-all, didn't just get defensive, he snapped. His tone turned sharp, his body language dismissive, and the rudeness cut through the screen. For many fans, this was not just Kody losing his temper, this was the unfiltered, raw version of the man who has hidden behind excuses, favoritism, and polished confessionals for over a decade. And in that flash, viewers saw confirmation of what they've whispered about for years: the disregard for women's voices, the glaring favoritism toward Robyn, the endless denial of responsibility, and the crumbling of a family once presented as united. It wasn't just about disrespecting Sukanya, it was about exposing the truth of who Kody has become: a man cornered, defensive, and unable to mask the cracks in his own empire. Because this wasn't an isolated outburst. It symbolized something far bigger. Every failed promise at Coyote Pass, every moment of gaslighting, every wife left in tears, all of it came crashing into that one ugly exchange. The tell-all didn't just peel back the curtain, it ripped it away, showing us exactly how fragile the Brown family's foundation really is. Hi friends, I'm Sarah, and this is TLC's Sister Wives Daily. Welcome back. If you caught that tell-all moment, you know exactly how intense it was. And if you missed it, don't worry. We're breaking it all down right here. Now, before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Do you think Kody's disrespect towards Sukanya was just heat-of-the-moment defensiveness, or do you believe it exposed his true character once and for all? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one conversation fans everywhere are weighing in on. And while you're here, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you never miss a single update from Sister Wives Daily. Because trust me, what went down in this tell-all wasn't just drama, it was a turning point, the kind of television moment that changes how we see the Browns forever. And we are about to go deep into the betrayals, the financial chaos, the favoritism, and the wives finally finding their voices after years of silence. Stay with me, because the story is only just beginning. Before we even got to that explosive tell-all moment, Sister Wives had already taken viewers on a season that felt like one long unraveling thread. By the time the season 19 mid-season finale aired, the cracks in the Brown family weren't just visible anymore. They were wide open, impossible to ignore, and leaving fans wondering how much further things could fall apart. The Brown household that once tried to sell itself as a picture of unity through faith had morphed into a tense battleground of mistrust, accusations, and broken promises. Let's rewind for a second, because to understand why that tell-all became such a powder keg, you have to remember what was already simmering beneath the surface. Coyote Pass. Just hearing those two words is enough to spark a reaction among longtime Sister Wives fans. That patch of land in Flagstaff was supposed to be the Browns' fresh start, their dream property, where each wife would eventually have her own home, and the family could finally feel settled after years of moving around. But instead of uniting them, Coyote Pass turned into a money pit of conflict. Plans stalled, arguments grew, promises were made and broken, and as the years went by, resentment festered. For Janelle, who had poured her trust and her finances into making Coyote Pass a reality, the stalling was more than just inconvenient. It felt like betrayal. She was the practical one, the one willing to crunch numbers and make sacrifices. But when those sacrifices weren't respected, and when Kody seemed to prioritize his life with Robyn over making things work for everyone else, Janelle's patience started to run out. Fans could see it on her face. The woman who once kept quiet to avoid rocking the boat was no longer willing to play nice. And then there was Meri, always on the outside looking in. Her years of loyalty were rewarded with neglect and dismissal. The distance between her and Kody was no longer a secret. It was part of the show's storyline, openly acknowledged, yet rarely addressed with honesty. By the time this season rolled around, Meri wasn't just sidelined. She was all but erased from Kody's picture of family. And still she hung on, trying to find her place, until the tell-all gave her the platform to finally push back. Christine's story, of course, was already the loudest declaration that things were not okay. She walked away. She left the marriage, left the faith community, and chose happiness outside of Kody's control. Her decision, once controversial, now looks almost prophetic. Christine's honesty about how unloved and unwanted she felt shone a harsh light on the favoritism that had been building for years. Robyn wasn't just the new wife anymore. She was the wife, and no matter how Kody spun it, everyone could see the imbalance. Financial disputes piled onto the emotional fractures. Viewers watched as money became a recurring fight, how Kody and Robyn seemed to have financial stability while Janelle struggled, and how Meri's resources were used as leverage rather than shared freely. The very principle of polygamy, that everything should be divided fairly, felt like a joke. What Sister Wives had become was not about shared sacrifice, but about survival. By the time the mid-season finale aired, fans weren't asking, can this family fix itself anymore? They were asking, what's left to even fix? The unity had dissolved, the trust was gone, and the wives, once hesitant to challenge Kody directly, were beginning to voice what they had kept inside for years. That's why the tell-all carried so much weight. It wasn't just another reunion special, it was the stage where everything could be laid bare, where Sukanya, as the host, became the voice of the viewers, asking the questions the audience screamed at their screens. The tell-all wasn't a chance to heal, it was a reckoning, a spotlight that no one could hide from. So when Kody lashed out, when his temper finally boiled over on camera, it wasn't a surprise out of nowhere. It was the inevitable outcome of a season. No, years, filled with favoritism, gaslighting, broken promises, and fractured relationships. The tension had been building for too long, and this was the moment it finally erupted in full view of millions. The Browns had built their story on the idea that silence, sacrifice, and faith could hold a polygamist family together. But the tell-all proved something else entirely. Silence doesn't last forever. When people have been ignored long enough, they find their voice. And in this season, those voices were louder than ever. If there was one thing that made fans collectively cringe this season, it was watching Kody try, and fail, to prove his devotion to Robyn in front of the cameras. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't natural, and it definitely wasn't convincing. Instead, it came across as awkward overcompensation, the kind of desperate look at me, I'm a great husband act, that only made the favoritism more obvious. Take the infamous dishwashing scene. Kody, sleeves rolled up, clanking around the kitchen sink at Robyn's house, putting on this exaggerated display of helpfulness. On paper, that might sound like progress, a husband finally pitching in with housework. But the problem is, fans have a memory. And that memory stretches all the way back through years of Sister Wives footage, where Kody could barely be bothered to help Meri, Janelle, or Christine with the same everyday tasks. In fact, more often than not, we saw those wives carrying the full load while Kody strutted around with excuses. So when he suddenly appeared at Robyn's sink, suds flying, almost performing for the camera, it didn't feel genuine. It felt staged. It felt like a man trying to rewrite his own narrative on national television, as if a single chore could erase a decade of neglect toward his other wives. And the audience noticed. Social media lit up with comments pointing out the hypocrisy, fans shaking their heads at how transparent it all looked. Then there was the flexing. Yes, the literal flexing. Kody puffing out his chest, showing off his muscles, trying to impress Robyn in ways that bordered on embarrassing. These weren't private, intimate moments. They were on camera, and they read like a man desperately trying to prove he was still desirable, still powerful, still the man. But instead of coming across as strong, it made him look insecure. It was as if Kody needed constant validation from Robyn to feel relevant, and he wasn't afraid to chase that validation right in front of the cameras. Now here's where it gets painful. Because while Kody was busy playing the doting husband for Robyn, his coldness toward the other wives was on full display. The contrast was almost too sharp to ignore. Think about it. Did viewers ever see Kody wash dishes at Meri's place when she was struggling alone? Did he ever jump in to help Janelle with the endless responsibilities of raising kids and managing family finances? Did he ever flex his muscles for Christine as a playful romantic gesture back when she was crying out for love and attention? The answer is no. In fact, the opposite was true. Time and time again, the other wives told stories of being dismissed, ignored, or outright scolded when they asked for his help or affection. Christine famously shared how invisible she felt, how unwanted she became. Janelle admitted she was tired of fighting for scraps of attention. And Meri, she was left so isolated that even when she tried to rekindle her relationship, Kody shut the door and labeled her attempts as embarrassing. So watching Kody parade around Robyn's kitchen, scrubbing dishes and grinning like he discovered some brand new form of husbandry, wasn't just laughable. It was insulting. It was like he was saying to the world, Look how devoted I can be. But only when it's for Robyn, only when it serves his chosen narrative. And the wives who were cast aside couldn't help but see the double standard. Fans noticed too. The online chatter didn't just mock Kody's theatrics, it called out the deeper issue. People saw through the soap bubbles and muscle flexes. They saw favoritism dressed up as devotion. They saw decades of neglect shoved under the rug, while Kody poured all his energy into keeping Robyn happy. And they asked the hard question: if Kody had been capable of showing this kind of attention all along, why did he never extend it to the others? The truth is, those little public gestures weren't about love. They were about optics. They were about a man clinging to the image of being a good husband, even as the entire family structure collapsed around him. But in trying to prove himself, Kody ended up confirming exactly what Christine, Janelle, and Meri had been saying for years. He does have the capacity to be attentive, supportive, and present. He just chose to reserve that version of himself exclusively for Robyn. And that's why these moments became so humiliating, not just for Kody, but for the family as a whole. Because the other wives weren't blind. They saw the way he lit up for Robyn and shut down for them. They watched him scrub those dishes with a smile, knowing he never would have done the same in their homes. They saw the muscles flex not as playful romance, but as proof of a man who had picked a side long ago. For viewers, it was the ultimate confirmation that the shared marriage was a lie. The cameras didn't capture a man balancing 4 wives fairly. They captured a man showing off for one wife, while leaving the others to wonder why they were never enough. And that, more than any chore or flex, told the real story. If there was ever a single storyline that summed up the collapse of the Brown family dream, it was Coyote Pass. That patch of dusty land in Flagstaff was supposed to symbolize their unity, their vision for the future, their chance to finally build something together after years of moving and uncertainty. But instead, it became the battlefield where everything unraveled. What started as a shared dream turned into endless suspicion, financial disputes, and betrayal that no one could ignore. From the beginning, Coyote Pass was more fantasy than reality. Kody pitched it like a grand plan, this sprawling piece of land where each wife would have her own home, and together they would build a new version of family harmony. But even as he sold the idea, cracks were already forming. The wives weren't just struggling emotionally, they were carrying real financial doubts. How would they even pay for construction when debts were mounting? And who exactly was controlling the purse strings? That's where the tension exploded. Meri, who had long kept quiet or swallowed her frustration, reached a breaking point. On camera, she made it clear that she was no longer willing to just nod along while Kody made financial decisions in the dark. For years, Meri had been sidelined, treated like her opinions didn't matter. But when it came to Coyote Pass, she wasn't about to let her future security be dictated by half-truths and vague promises. In one of the most striking moments, she flat out accused Kody of shady dealings. She hinted at missing transparency, at numbers not adding up, at conversations happening without her. And she went further. She said if it came to it, she would get lawyers involved. That wasn't just a passing comment. It was a declaration of war, proof that Meri had finally reached the point where silence was no longer an option. Fans couldn't believe it. For years, Meri had been portrayed as quiet, often timid, holding on to scraps of hope in her relationship with Kody. But here, with her financial future on the line, she showed a fire that shocked both viewers and her own family. And it wasn't just about money, it was about trust. Meri made it clear she didn't trust Kody to handle the land fairly, and for the first time, she was ready to put that on record. Then there was Janelle, the wife who had always been the practical one, the one with the spreadsheets and the steady voice of reason. But even she couldn't hold back anymore. For years, she had tried to play mediator, tried to balance her loyalty to Kody with her love for the other wives. But Coyote Pass broke her patience. She called out what everyone else was feeling, that it wasn't about the land, it wasn't even about the money, it was about trust. And in Janelle's words, trust was more valuable than any financial plan. When Janelle said those words, you could feel the weight of them, because by then, the trust was gone. Gone between Kody and Meri, gone between Kody and Janelle, and definitely gone between Christine and Kody, who had already walked away from the dream altogether. What was left was a crumbling facade of unity, a man clinging to control, and 3 women who had finally had enough of being left in the dark. And let's not forget Robyn's role in all of this. While Kody was dodging questions and the other wives were voicing real fears, Robyn kept trying to play innocent. She framed herself as confused, as caught in the middle, but fans weren't buying it. Because every time finances came up, it seemed like Kody and Robyn were aligned, making decisions together while the other wives were left guessing. That dynamic didn't go unnoticed. Viewers pointed out how Robyn's household always seemed secure, while the others were stuck in limbo, waiting on promises that never materialized. Coyote Pass was supposed to be the dream, but it became the clearest symbol of betrayal. Instead of homes and unity, it gave us suspicion, legal threats, and the slow realization that the Brown family was no longer a family at all. Meri's warning about lawyers showed just how far things had fallen. Janelle's words about trust being worth more than money proved that no piece of land could fix what had already broken. And Kody's evasions only deepened the suspicion that maybe, just maybe, the land was never about the family at all. Maybe it was about control. For viewers, the whole saga was heartbreaking but also validating. Heartbreaking because you could see how much hope had once been tied to that dream. Validating because it confirmed everything fans had long suspected: Kody wasn't managing fairly, favoritism was in play, and the wives were finally ready to say it out loud. The collapse of Coyote Pass wasn't just about dirt and deeds. It was about years of silence breaking apart, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. By the time the tell-all came around, the land wasn't a dream anymore. It was evidence. Evidence of broken trust, of manipulation, of promises that were never meant to be kept. And it set the stage for the wives to finally confront Kody in a way they never had before. If there was one person who refused to sugarcoat the truth at the tell-all, it was Christine. From the moment she sat down with Sukanya, you could tell she wasn't here to play nice or protect anyone's image. Christine had walked away from the marriage, built a new life, and found her voice, and she was going to use it. What came out wasn't just commentary, it was a bombshell series of truths that hit Kody and Robyn where it hurt the most: their so-called love story. Christine didn't hold back when she described how obvious Kody's favoritism toward Robyn had been from the start. Fans had seen glimpses of it for years, but hearing Christine put it into words felt like a confirmation of everything viewers had always suspected. She pointed directly to the timeline of their relationship, suggesting that Kody and Robyn were far more emotionally entangled long before they were officially married. And to drive the point home, Christine brought up those engagement photos, the ones that made it clear the bond between Kody and Robyn looked more like a seasoned marriage than a new courtship. That kind of bluntness hit like a lightning strike. For years, Kody and Robyn had insisted that their relationship developed appropriately within the rules of their faith and family structure, but Christine wasn't buying it, and neither were the fans. By pointing out the way Robyn and Kody behaved before the wedding, the closeness, the body language, the giddy affection, she made it clear that the other wives were playing second fiddle long before the papers were signed. And let's be honest, viewers could see it too. Those old clips told a story all on their own. The power of Christine's words wasn't just in what she said, but in how she said it. There was no bitterness in her tone. She wasn't angry, she wasn't pleading. She was free, and that freedom gave her commentary a sharpness that landed even harder. It was the difference between someone still trying to hold on to a broken system and someone who had walked away and could finally call things what they were. Christine wasn't trying to win Kody back or prove her worth. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her honesty unstoppable. The contrast between Christine's past and present couldn't have been clearer. In the earlier seasons, we watched her struggle in silence. She cried about being invisible, about not being valued, about living in a marriage where her husband's attention was always elsewhere. But at the tell-all, the Christine sitting across from Sukanya was almost unrecognizable. She was smiling, confident, even joyful as she told the truth about her past. Her happiness in her new life made her bluntness even more powerful, because you could see what it looked like when someone finally broke free of Kody's control, and fans loved every second of it. Social media blew up with praise for Christine, calling her the hero of the tell-all, the one who finally said out loud what so many had been thinking for years. People weren't just listening to her words, they were cheering for her journey. Because Christine represented something bigger than her own story. She represented every woman who has ever been silenced, every wife who has ever been made to feel less than, every partner who has ever been told to just deal with it. In that tell-all chair, she became the voice of truth, the one who cut through all of Kody's spin and Robyn's crocodile tears. Of course, Kody didn't take it well. You could see the tension in his face, the way he bristled as Christine spoke. Because Christine wasn't just calling out favoritism, she was dismantling the very foundation of the story Kody and Robyn had been selling. By shining a light on the timeline, she revealed that their pure narrative was anything but. And that kind of exposure was devastating to a man who thrives on controlling the storyline. Robyn, too, didn't escape the sting. Christine's comments made it clear that Robyn's victim act wasn't holding up. If anything, it exposed her as complicit in the favoritism, someone who benefited from Kody's attention while the other wives were left to pick up the pieces. And the fact that Christine was laughing, radiant, and fully alive while telling this story only made Robyn look more entrenched in the misery she and Kody had created for themselves. For viewers, this was the catharsis they had been waiting for. Christine wasn't just another ex-wife with a sad story. She was the one who had found her way out, who had turned the pain into strength, and who was now willing to shine a spotlight on the lies. That combination of honesty and happiness made her testimony impossible to dismiss. Christine's explosive truths were more than gossip fodder. They were a turning point in the tell-all, a reminder that the family's collapse wasn't just about land disputes or petty arguments. It was about a pattern of disrespect, favoritism, and emotional neglect that Christina had endured and escaped. Her words didn't just describe the past, they inspired the future. Because in Christine's freedom, fans could see a path forward for everyone who had been left in the shadows of Kody's control. And that's why, at the tell-all, Christine wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for Meri, for Janelle, for every fan who had watched in frustration. She was the truth-telling voice, the one people were proud to cheer for. And in the world of Sister Wives, that made her the most powerful figure of all. If you followed Sister Wives from the beginning, then you know Meri's story has been one of the hardest to watch. For years she lived in the shadows, the first wife, the one who stood by as the family grew and shifted, often at her expense. She was the woman who endured the catfishing scandal, who clung to hope even when Kody made it painfully clear there was no romantic relationship left, and who spent season after season, isolated, lonely, and silenced. But at the tell-all, and in the months leading up to it, something shifted. Meri was no longer playing the role of the quiet, discarded wife. She was reclaiming her voice, and she was doing it with a fire we hadn't seen in years. To understand the power of Meri's transformation, you have to remember where she started. The catfishing scandal nearly destroyed her. Back then, she was painted as desperate, as someone looking for affection in all the wrong places. Kody used that betrayal as justification to distance himself even further. The other wives admitted they didn't know how to support her, and Meri retreated into silence. For years it seemed like she was just stuck. The woman who once dreamed of love and partnership became the ghost of the family, present but ignored, still clinging to the idea of belonging, even as she was pushed out. But silence doesn't last forever. Slowly, Meri started finding her footing again. She leaned on her bed and breakfast business. She leaned on her friendships outside of the family. And then came social media, which became a new platform. At first, her posts were cryptic, full of inspirational quotes that hinted at her pain. But over time, those posts grew bolder. She started speaking directly about her refusal to be silenced, about her determination to live authentically, about no longer waiting for someone else's approval to define her worth. By the time the tell-all rolled around, it was clear Meri had found her voice again, and she wasn't afraid to use it. Sitting across from Sukanya, she didn't just reflect on her struggles, she hinted at action. She openly suggested that if pushed, she was willing to bring in lawyers to protect her stake in Kody Pass. And beyond that, she teased the possibility of sharing her story in her own words, in her own time. The idea of a Meri tell-all book suddenly didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a promise. And fans were here for it. Because let's be honest, who has more untold stories than Meri? She's seen it all. She was there from the beginning, the first to marry Kody, the one who welcomed Janelle and Christine, the one who had to watch Robyn walk into the family and change everything. She's lived through the best and the worst of polygamy, and for decades, she bit her tongue. But now, that restraint is gone. Her Instagram posts, her sharp words at the tell-all, her subtle digs at Kody's version of events, they all point to a woman no longer afraid of the fallout. What makes Meri's transformation so powerful is what it represents. For years she was the cautionary tale, the wife who stayed too long, who endured too much, who never spoke up. But now, she's become something else entirely. She's a symbol of women reclaiming their voices after decades of control. She's showing that it's never too late to stop being silent, never too late to tell the truth, never too late to demand respect. And you can feel the difference in the way fans talk about her. Once people pitied Meri, they shook their heads at her devotion to a man who so clearly discarded her. But now, people cheer her on. They beg for her to spill the secrets, to tell her side, to finally shine a light on everything that was brushed under the rug. The quiet wife has become the one fans are rooting for the loudest, because her voice carries the weight of decades of silence. Even Kody seemed rattled by Meri's new edge. In the past he dismissed her, mocked her, even minimized her pain in interviews. But at the tell-all, when Meri talked about legal action and hinted at her own story, you could see him tense up. Because if Meri really decides to open up fully, she has the power to dismantle the carefully curated narrative Kody has clung to for so long. And that possibility makes her dangerous. Not in a malicious way, but in a liberating way. Meri's transformation isn't just about revenge or bitterness. It's about liberation. It's about finally refusing to live in the shadow of someone else's story. Her Instagram captions, her body language at the tell-all, her newfound confidence all point to a woman who knows she's survived the worst and is ready to step into the best. Whether that takes the form of a book, or more public revelations, or simply continuing to live her truth online, one thing is certain: Meri is not going back to silence. And in the end, that's what makes her story so compelling. She represents every woman who has been told to sit down, shut up, and accept less than she deserves. And by refusing to do that anymore, Meri has become one of the most powerful figures in the Sister Wives saga. She isn't just part of the story, she's rewriting it. The tell-all stage has always been charged, but this time it was different. The tension didn't just sit in the air, it crackled like static, pulling everyone to the edge of their seats. From the moment Sukanya Krishnan sat across from Kody Brown, you could sense the storm brewing. Kody wasn't calm, he wasn't collected, and he certainly wasn't respectful. He came in hot, defensive, and ready to bulldoze anyone who challenged him. And Sukanya, who has been criticized in the past for being too gentle, wasn't backing down. She came prepared. She asked the questions fans had been screaming at their TVs for years. Why the blatant favoritism toward Robyn? Why the financial chaos over Coyote Pass? Why the abandonment of Meri, Janelle, and Christine? Why the anger every time accountability comes knocking? But Kody didn't answer with grace. He didn't even attempt diplomacy. Instead, he lashed out, cutting Sukanya off mid-sentence, talking over her questions, waving his hands in frustration, and letting his temper take full control. His voice rose, his face flushed red, and the mask that he has tried so hard to maintain for years finally slipped. This wasn't the charismatic patriarch he once presented himself as. This was a man cornered, exposed, and unwilling to face the truth. One of the most shocking moments came when Sukanya pressed him about his relationship with Robyn versus the other wives. Fans have begged for this question: why was Robyn always treated like the exception while everyone else got scraps of attention? Instead of owning his choices, Kody exploded. He accused the wives of being jealous, of sabotaging his happiness, of not supporting him. He tried to spin the narrative, but Sukanya didn't let him off the hook. She calmly repeated the question, her voice steady, her eyes locked on him. And that composure only made Kody look worse. Every interruption, every tantrum, every flinch of frustration told the audience exactly what they needed to know. This wasn't about polygamy working or not working. It wasn't about wives who wouldn't cooperate. It was about Kody's need for control, his refusal to be questioned, and his inability to hide his favoritism any longer. The more Sukanya stayed calm, the more Kody unraveled. And let's be real, fans were cheering her on. Social media lit up with praise for Sukanya's strength. She became the stand-in for the audience, asking what everyone had wanted to shout at Kody for years. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't take the bait. She let Kody's temper expose him in a way no one else could. By simply holding her ground, she revealed more truth than any dramatic outburst from the wives ever had. Robyn, of course, sat quietly, her face twisted with discomfort. She didn't step in to calm Kody. She didn't speak up to diffuse the tension. And maybe that's what made the moment sting even more. Because while Sukanya represented accountability, Robyn represented complicity. She stayed silent while Kody self-destructed, the same way she has stayed silent while the family fell apart, benefiting from his favoritism without ever challenging him. What made this tell-all moment feel so historic was that it was the point of no return. For years, Kody has managed to spin his story, to gaslight the wives and the audience into thinking his choices were somehow noble or justified. But watching him yell over Sukanya, dismiss her questions, and sneer with visible disdain, it stripped away whatever was left of his carefully constructed image. This was Kody without the polish. This was Kody exposed, and the symbolism wasn't lost on fans. Sukanya, a woman who has endured criticism for not pressing hard enough in past tell-alls, finally pushed. And Kody, a man who once prided himself on being a leader, couldn't take it. He cracked under the pressure of simple accountability. If Sukanya could rattle him this much, it raised the question, what else is he hiding that he can't bear to confront? By the end of the exchange, the room felt different. Kody wasn't in control anymore. His favoritism, his anger, his defensiveness, they were all laid bare for everyone to see. The wives didn't need to add much commentary, because his own behavior spoke louder than anything they could have said. And for viewers at home, it was almost cathartic. After years of watching him dismiss, belittle, and manipulate, they finally saw him exposed in real time, unable to mask his true self. The tell-all didn't just serve as another reunion special. It became the mirror Kody couldn't look away from, no matter how hard he tried. Sukanya's composure, her persistence, and her refusal to be steamrolled turned this into the breaking point of the season. The explosion wasn't just Kody's temper, it was the collapse of his authority, the loss of his credibility, and the undeniable truth that he could no longer hide behind excuses. When the dust finally settled after Kody's tell-all explosion, the stage looked like the aftermath of a storm. Robyn once again was in tears. Her voice cracked as she insisted that she never wanted to be the favorite, that she never asked for this chaos. But those tears didn't wash away years of choices, years of benefiting from Kody's obsession, while the other wives carried the weight of neglect. And instead of sympathy, many fans saw her crying as another performance, the same script she's leaned on for years, the script of victimhood. Kody meanwhile sat defensive and sulking, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. He wasn't reflective, he wasn't apologetic, he was still in fight mode, blaming everyone but himself. Sukanya had just peeled back the mask, and now all he could do was scramble to protect the scraps of his authority. His words were sharp, but his tone betrayed something deeper: fear. Fear that the family was gone for good. Fear that the narrative was slipping from his control. Fear that the world now saw him for what the wives had endured all along. The emotional fallout was even sharper for the other wives. Meri looked tired but firm, a woman who had finally found the strength to say enough. Her threats of legal action over Coyote Pass still hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud waiting to break. For decades, she had been silent, even submissive, but now she held the power to drag Kody into a courtroom. The possibility of lawsuits, from Meri, from Janelle, even tied to Christine's revelations, loomed large, and it was clear Kody couldn't laugh it off anymore. Christine, on the other hand, looked lighter than ever. Her commentary cut through the tension with sharp honesty, her blunt reminders of Kody's long-standing favoritism leaving no room for excuses. And beyond the tell-all, she has her book, her chance to put the truth into print, to share what really happened behind closed doors. Every word she spoke on that stage felt like a preview of what's to come, raw, unapologetic, and unfiltered. For fans, Christine wasn't just a voice of reason, she was the one finally writing history without Kody's edits. Then there was Janelle. Her bitterness wasn't loud, but it was steady. You could see it in her eyes, hear it in her calm but cutting words. She wasn't screaming or crying, she was done. Done fighting for fairness, done pretending there was a family left to save. For Janelle, trust was more valuable than money, and Kody had squandered both. The fracture between them wasn't just emotional, it was practical, tied to land, finances, and years of broken promises. Her quiet defiance was as powerful as Christine's outspokenness. And that's the question the tell-all left hanging: is there anything left to salvage? On one side, you have Kody and Robyn, clinging to each other, their version of the family crumbling around them. On the other, you have Meri, Christine, and Janelle, women who are no longer afraid to speak, to act, to fight for their truth. The dream of one big united polygamist family is gone. What remains now are shards of loyalty, of bitterness, of love turned sour. Kody's eruption at Sukanya wasn't just about disrespect, it was symbolic. It was the moment the curtain finally dropped on the Brown family experiment. The explosive temper, the defensiveness, the favoritism laid bare. It all told the story of why this family could never survive. Polygamy, as Kody envisioned it, was never about equality or love, it was about control. And once the wives stopped submitting to that control, the dream was doomed. So, is this the end? Fans are asking that question everywhere. Some believe the show can't go on without the family at its center. Others think this is just the beginning of a new chapter, one where the wives' voices are finally the main story, free from Kody's narrative. Either way, the tell-all made one thing crystal clear: the Brown family as we once knew it no longer exists. And that's where we leave this season, not with resolution, but with suspense. Will Meri follow through with legal action? Will Christine's book blow the lid off the entire past? Will Janelle ever speak out with the full force fans are waiting for, or will Kody and Robyn try to rebuild their version of the family, clinging to a dream that has already died? Friends, this is more than a TV show at this point. It's a cautionary tale, a saga of control, loss, and ultimately, liberation. Kody's tell-all meltdown wasn't just a moment of bad behavior, it was the symbol of the end of a polygamist dream that could never survive the weight of truth. I'm Sarah, and this has been TLC's Sister Wives Daily. Thank you for being here with me as we unpack every tear, every fight, and every revelation. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and tell me in the comments, what did you think of Kody's explosive disrespect at the tell-all? Was this the moment you finally saw the end coming? Because one thing's for certain, the Brown family we knew is gone, and the story from here will never be the same.